listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host Ashley Case, we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Marissa Martinez. Marissa currently serves as Director of Proposal Management for Woods Resilient Environments RE Corporate Proposal Center, where she brings more than 20 years of proposal management, capture, and business development experience. Marissa is highly experienced in leading high-performing teams in the submission of high-priority, competitive proposal responses for federal government and international customers. She coaches and mentors staff in capture and proposal management execution, including the development of value propositions, win strategies, capture plans, teaming, past performance, and pricing strategy. She began her career working in various international business development roles in satellite communications industry. Marissa holds a Bachelor's of Arts in International Marketing from DePaul University and a Master of Science in Global Leadership from University of San Diego. She's a Project Management Institute, PMI Certified Project Management Professional, PMP, and also holds the APMP's Practitioner-level certification. Welcome, Marissa, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Marissa. Let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born? And let's talk about your high school and education.
Okay, so, I was born in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Ciudad Juarez is a border city in north central Mexico. So I grew up there, and after I finished primary school, my parents decided to move us across the border to El Paso, Texas. So at the time, we applied for student visas, and I was enrolled in middle school. So I went to Coronado High School there in El Paso, Texas. I also attended the University of Texas at El Paso, but I ultimately completed my undergrad at DePaul University. And then later on, once I was in San Diego, I completed my master's at the University of San Diego School of Business. So I think, that's it in a nutshell.
That's great, Marissa. So how was it moving from the border to the other side and having the education living in a multicultural background?
Yeah, so I think, border areas, as you said, are very multicultural, which brings a lot of richness. Most people that live along the border are bilingual. They speak, English and Spanish, much like, other people. They live, on the Northeast, right? The Canadian border with Quebec. So it's a very rich culture. You get to experience more of the food, the culture. For me, it wasn't much of a culture shock because I think both cities are very similar. It just meant that now we had to travel across the border to visit family. I was very close to my maternal grandparents, so we still traveled a lot to visit them. Sometimes even just to have dinner with our grandparents after school. As you may have heard, later on in the late 90s, early 2000s, border towns gained notoriety, especially my city, due to the violence, due to the drug cartels, and I think also violence against women. But it wasn't that way when I was a kid. It was quite the contrary. I think it was very safe. As children, we had a lot of independence, meaning, we could get on our bikes and go to our grandparents' house, go to the bakery, go to the corner store. So it was very different.
Wow, very nice childhood memory, and it's amazing how you saw through that transformation of how the borders changed over the years. That's quite nice, Marissa. So, moving back to US, you did your masters, and what was your very first job?
My very first job was actually, I worked in a retail shop at the local mall there in El Paso. So yeah, through college, I did a lot of retail types of jobs before I actually entered, more of a technology oriented work. Once I moved to San Diego, I responded to an ad from a company called Constream. They manufacture satellite modems, along with audio and video receivers, and they integrated what's called VSATs. Right. So I joined their team as a sales assistant supporting the Americas team. They were looking for somebody who was bilingual because they had offices in Mexico City, in Bogota, Colombia, and also in Sao Paulo. I didn't speak, Portuguese, but I did speak Spanish. So I think even though I didn't have the experience, they were impressed just by the fact that I was, fully bilingual, and I got the job.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Again, language is amazing. The more you learn, the more you know a lot, right? I'm quite blessed. So how many languages can you speak, Marissa?
English and Spanish only.
That's not bad.
Yes. I mean, I can get by maybe with French, a little bit of Italian, but honestly, I only English and Spanish.
That's nice to have. Me llamo Pascal. I mean, I studied Spanish for 6 months in Spain, actually, but that was a long time ago. It was a long time ago, and it's a funny story. I met. I was supposed to travel to some other place, but I met this lady because the tube, the London Underground, the tube on that day, halfway through, there was a signal issue. So we all have to take a bus from there, go. And then I met this language teacher from the university up north in Spain. And then she just said, where are you going? I just said, I'm going to Malta to be with my friends. And then he just said, what's your plans? And so on. So then the conversation went really deep. So I actually went to Malta, but then 1 week later, I actually went and met. Then I actually took, during the break, I just went and studied Spanish with her and in a college, staying in her place with the family, with the children and stuff. It's, I think going back now, it's all looked like a memory, Marissa. So that's great. So from then on, what brought you into the satellite communication industry? And let's gradually move from there, from that sales assistant job that you took to SATCOM, and from SATCOM to your current role.
Right. So, as you may have heard, I'm sure from others, I don't think people generally say, when I grow up, I want to write proposals, for complex government contracts. It's something that you sort of fall into, but I can tell you that I've been working proposals pretty much from the onset of my career in technology. So when I worked at Comstream, we often had to respond to these international RFPs, many times to government entities, right? And at the time, the company did not have a proposal center. So it was one of those situations where people had to sort of roll up their sleeves and do, whatever they had to do to get the final product out the door. So while I was there, I worked some large opportunities for customers, again, in Mexico, in Colombia, and Brazil. While I was in my BD roles with other organizations, I continued working proposals as well. And what I found is that I was usually tagged as sort of the, the lead, the one that would, organize the information, write and edit content, finalize the package, deliver it to the customer. So after that, I just decided to focus my career on proposals because I really enjoyed it. So from around, I believe it was around 2003, 2004, close to 20 years that I've really been focused on working proposals.
Wow, 20 plus years on proposals. Do you have a memorable proposal effort, Marissa?
Well, there are so many, frankly. I've worked for different companies and had the experience of working on some really challenging efforts. I would say that somewhat early in my career, I worked an opportunity called GRAIL. It was the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory project, which was part of NASA's Discovery program. And I was I remember being just fascinated by what, this program was going to do. Essentially, it was 2 satellites that were going to fly in tandem. And they were going to collect, flying around the moon, they were going to collect data that would lead scientists to learn more about the moon, its interior structure, and, potentially providing, a better understanding of how even Earth was formed. So for that project or that proposal, I had the opportunity along with the project manager to work closely with scientists from JPL, which was to me very, very cool. But again, there's been many opportunities. There was another opportunity where I got to partner really closely with BD and Capture, and had the opportunity to visit a customer. And the intent of that, this was prior to release of the draft RFP, the intent of that was to conduct a day in the life of the customer study, basically getting tours, understanding what they do, how they do it, how they use, the solution to learn more about their pain points, their hot buttons. That one was also very memorable. There are others, so I could go on and on, but overall, I think this track for me, because of experiences like these, has been really, really rewarding. Just to experience different technologies, different customers, different applications.
Mm. So in the end, did you manage to find how the Earth was made up of?
I remember on GRAIL, they launched those satellites. I remember it was around the holidays.
Mm.
So I didn't really follow up on the final studies. I know that the satellites did go up, and we sort of knew when they were going up. So just thinking, gosh, they're flying out there. They're going to start their mission. My understanding is that it was successful, but I never learned about the actual findings that were, or the data that they collected.
It'll be interesting, but that's great. I mean, successful career. So let's talk about your current role, Marissa. Talk about your team and your role, and how did you manage your team in this COVID crisis? Any shout outs or any stories you want to share?
Sure. So I made a transition a couple of months ago. The team that I'm currently working with, most of them had been working remotely for a long time. And I think proposal folks, we're very dynamic. We are quick to adjust because sometimes, we deal with a lot of very dynamic situations, right? Unexpected situations. So as for myself, I can speak for myself, adjusting to a fully remote work from home situation wasn't really that hard. It was, I did have to purchase a larger desk because the desk that I had before, I felt like it was quite crowded, and I do like to kind of stretch out, have more space. But aside from that, from a technology standpoint, I had been working from home, sometimes evenings or weekends. So it wasn't that big of an adjustment. I think what is important with teams and with staff is that we continually check on them, on their well-being. We don't have the privilege of seeing people face to face, getting that sort of interaction. So I think it's important that we have continual checkups. Sometimes, I understand that people don't like to get on video, but I think every once in a while, it's nice to make that connection. And see people's faces, their smiles, and just connect on a more human level, right? Less about deadlines and what we have to do, and more just, to your point, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? How are you managing? Is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you? That kind of stuff.
100%, Marissa. You said it beautifully. Marissa, at what point did you come across APMP, and talk us through your journey with APMP, the chapter, the conference, your certifications, and so on?
So I first joined APMP, I believed around 2008, 2009. But there was a period of time where I allowed my membership to lapse. I did renew it, I think it was in 2014. And since then I've been, I've continued to be a member. I'm also a member of the California chapter. But overall, I think now more than ever, right? I've leaned on APMP as a resource for information, for moral support. It's such a unique career, right? When we try to explain to our friends, our acquaintances, what it is that we do, sometimes it's hard to put into words or articulate, everything that goes into putting together a proposal. So it's nice to be part of a community that gets it, that knows what it is that we do and understands the challenges and the rewards. So, earlier we were talking about, BidCon. So again, I haven't had the opportunity to attend many BidCons, but I have attended, the California training days. So APMP California puts together a training day in the fall. And it's essentially a day where we gather, we meet up at Disneyland, which is kind of fun. and we go through a full day of sessions, and there's opportunities, of course, to connect with other folks that are in the industry, here in California. And then at the end, there's an opportunity also to socialize and get to know people more on a personal level.
Wow, Marissa, that's great. I mean, I think at least you have the option to do more on, because for us it's a holiday. We are traveling all the way to US and we need a valid reason. What's that? It's Bitcoin.
Right.
And we come over and then we maximize it. But I understand if you're traveling within UK, sorry, it's the same thing for me. When there is a UK conference in London, I attend. But when there is a UK conference outside London, I don't attend. It's not just because I don't want it, just mentally, it's a different space. I'll be happy to go to Amsterdam or US, but not to Birmingham or somewhere up north here to just do it.
Yeah.
But that's great.
Yeah,
So
I think that the main reason why I haven't attended many conferences is because I've always prioritized my work, and I working proposals and being always on a constant deadline. Sometimes it's hard to take the time away, but I think it's also important to consider that and do take that time to connect with others, right? Connect with our peers in our industry.
Totally.
And learn from them.
Totally, Marissa, 100% agreed. Marissa, we talked a lot about your career, early life, APMP. Let's talk a little bit more about you. So tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
3 things not many people know about me. So I think one thing that sometimes, I guess people that know me very well maybe wouldn't be surprised, but there was, a time where I owned a coffee shop in El Paso, Texas. It was an actual cafe in the 90s. And it was a very fun experience, initially doing, all the research from the coffee, the equipment, the design, just everything that goes into running a small business, right? And it was quite successful. Eventually, I sold my share and shortly after moved to San Diego. But for a few years, that was my life. I was a small business owner. I think another thing that people may not know about me is, that I am from Ciudad Juarez. So I think sometimes people ask me, well, they think, I was born here in California, just because I've lived here so long, but I think people are surprised sometimes by that. And I can't think of anything else, really.
Thank you, Marissa. That's kind of nicely takes us to the random rapid fire questions round. There is no right or wrong answer. Just whatever comes into mind, let that be the answer. And now we change this round to Nutters round in honor of Howard Nutt. So the questions doesn't have any pattern. Let's just go. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. So first question, if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
Ooh, if I was invisible for a day, I think I would just take some time to myself, to be, maybe transport myself somewhere where I could be by myself in a quiet space.
That's nice. Perfect. Who haven't you seen or talked to in a long time and you hope that they're doing okay?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Colleagues that I worked with very closely at other companies. Again, we get busy. We we dive deep into our work, but yeah, there's a few colleagues that I think about on a regular basis that I work very closely with.
That's great. That's great. So if you are attending a Halloween party, what would your costume be and why?
That's a good question. I don't know, maybe some type of superhero. I really don't dress up on Halloween. I haven't dressed up since my kids were little, but I would probably dress up as a superhero.
Superhero? So what superpower would you like to have, Marissa?
I think I would love to have the superpower of just being able to speed read and process a lot of information very quickly, instantaneously.
I think this round is all about coming out of your proposal bite, but you still haven't come out. So let me take you with something else. So what will you do if you have a time machine?
If I had a time machine, oh my goodness, I would love to go back and spend time with my mom. My mom passed away rather suddenly and unexpectedly, and it's still something that I don't think I've fully, understood or recovered from, and I don't know that I ever will. So being with my mom.
That's beautiful, Marissa. I think most people would answer, I would like to go back to be in the Napoleonic Wars or go back here. But you were amazing. That was a beautiful response. The first time I've heard something so personal. It's very good. Thank you. So what's something that you have that's of sentimental value to you?
Okay, so I have a few photos of my maternal grandfather that are quite old. Actually, they're approaching close to 100 years, I think. I think they were taken shortly before he married my grandmother in the 1920s. I think he married her in 1924. So these are probably from like 1923. And it's just they're black and white, of course. And they're originals. And some of the edges on one of them are a little, worn, tattered. But just to see him young and the clothing he was wearing, there's one where he's seated and another one where he's standing, and he has a 3-piece suit, shoes. Just the whole setting of the photo is very impressive, and sometimes I just kind of stare at it and think about him and my grandmother and just the amazing life that they had.
Wow. You just took me back to some time there, Marissa. So that's good. Marissa, if you could make a rule for a day and if everyone had to follow it, what would that rule be?
Meet your deadlines.
Ooh.
Yeah, meet your deadlines. Sometimes we have a schedule, and it can be hard to get everyone, to meet their deadlines when working with teams.
Totally. So what song you normally listen to when you're alone, and what memory does it bring back?
Song. I can't say there's a particular song, but there are a couple of albums. When I was a teenager, I used to listen a lot to what they called the new wave type of music. So, New Order, Pet Shop Boys. So sometimes I still like to enjoy that. It takes me back, good memories. So all those albums just kind of energize me.
That's good. That's good. So if you could eat only three foods for the rest of your life, which three foods would you pick?
Three foods. I would say, of course, sushi. I love, fresh fish. And it would have to be also something Mexican, but that's so hard to narrow down what exactly. There's so many delicious Mexican, dishes. So something Mexican, I'll keep it at that. And then I would probably have to say a good cheese.
Interesting.
I love cheese.
It's a very unique combination there. But Mexican, I totally agree. Sushi, I don't have a choice. I have to have that anyway. So, but it's good. Cheese, though, I'm allergic to cheese, so I can't. But definitely Mexican, we are having that together, Marissa. That's good. So yes, that's random rapid fire questions round done. Now we look at few people in your life and a few final questions, Marissa. So, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Well, as I mentioned, my parents, in my personal life, without a doubt, my mother. Again, I was very close to my maternal grandparents. So I think growing up, they were my core, I very, very close-knit family. In my career, I've had great mentors, people from the onset that were extremely patient with me. They were generous with their time. They invested their knowledge to mentor me. As I said, when I initially started working as a sales assistant, I knew nothing about satellite technology. So there were lots of people during that time, and I still have connections with these people, relationships, and we, see each other, not recently because of the pandemic. And some of them are, in other parts of the world, but they really, again, spent time teaching me, being patient with me, and just supporting my growth.
That's great. You're blessed with so many people in your life, Marissa. That's amazing. Marissa, what's one personal trait you like the most about yourself?
That I like the most about myself? Well, I would say I try to remain calm in situations of extreme stress. Because I feel that if I project, that stress, it's gonna affect other people. So sometimes people will tell me, oh, you seem very calm. Things could be, in turmoil, or we could be under, extreme stress to get something done. But people will say, well, you seem pretty calm. But I think I just try to be mindful and just not allow those feelings, those emotions to kind of, affect others. So I've had feedback from people across different groups tell me that.
That's quite nice, Marissa. Definitely a gift. Total gift. So what's one common myth about our profession that you want to debunk?
I think a myth, and and I don't see it. I don't hear about this, as often anymore. But once upon a time, there was a myth that people thought that proposal professionals were almost like administrative professionals, right? And granted, there is a lot of administrative work that we have to do sometimes, with documents, but it's a lot more than that. It's much more complex. So I think it's important that we value the profession and what we as proposal professionals bring, to companies. It's that ability to lead teams and understand how to develop or put together a winning product, right? There's so many facets to what we do and so much knowledge that we have to bring together. So we, although there are some administrative aspects, we're not, an administrative professional.
Nicely said, Marissa. So what's the best piece of advice you have received and from whom?
Best piece of advice. When I was a young child, I learned a quote, and loosely translated, it says, among individuals and among nations, respect for the rights of others means peace, right? So sort of like the golden rule. I think today many of our problems stem from lack of understanding, cultural, perhaps conflict, partisan divides. So, and ultimately lack of respect, right? So if we really understand that respecting the rights of others, and that's pretty broad, is really what brings peace.
Wow, very profound there, Marissa. So, Marissa, we talked about successful career, APMP, family, few things about you, early life. What's next for you, Maria? What are you looking forward to in the future, Marissa?
Well, I've had the goal of achieving my APMP professional certification. I've lagged a bit in my preparation, because I've been absorbed in my work. But that is a goal that is, in the back of my head. I don't forget about it. So I will get through that. Aside from that, I think I'd like to continue doing what I'm doing, working proposals, supporting teams, providing value to my organization. Yes.
Perfect, Marissa. I think that's great. I'm sure you will achieve the professional before Christmas this year. Let's hope. Yeah, so that's it, Marissa. Thank you so much for joining Scribble Talk. It's been an absolute privilege to have you with us. Thank you for having a very soothing session. This is one of the very calm, soothing sessions we had in a long time. So I wish you, your family, all your loved ones, your colleagues, all the good health and happiness. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay sane, and looking forward to see you in person very soon. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.